Now it looks like the illusion is continuing, and we can see they're not letting up. They want everyone to believe, and Trump is out there, and he is telling everyone, look at all these jobs that we are creating. And he's saying that this is fantastic. Now, once again, this is part of the old system. Nothing has really changed. He didn't bring any jobs back into the United States. He didn't create these incredible manufacturing jobs. What he's doing right now is he's playing into what they've been pushing all along. Think about it. What policies has he put forth to make all of this happen? Nothing. So what does he have to do? He has to take what was there and say, yes, this is working because this is what they've been saying all along. Now let's take a look at these job numbers that the corporate media is out there telling us how great they are. Trump is out there telling us how great they are, telling us that the economy is at full strength. Now, the BLS reported that in July, U.S. added about 209,000 jobs. Now, that beat the consensus expectations of around 180,000. Now, June was revised higher to 231 from 222,000. Even as May was revised lower from 152 to 145. So there was a net gain of about 2,000 in the prior 2 months. Now, when we look at the jobs, what jobs are being added? Well, bars, restaurants, well, they hired the most workers of any sector in July. Now, keep in mind that the July gain was all in the seasonal adjustment factor. Unadjusted jobs declined by 1.308 million. Now, the unemployment rate dropped from 4.4% to 4.3%. We're almost at full employment here in the United States. Does this look like a country that is fully employed? No, it doesn't. Why would retail be crumbling apart? It doesn't make sense. Why would the housing market be stalling right now? Why aren't corporations making the sales? Why are there so many people out of the labor force market? I mean, think about it. The whole thing doesn't make sense. Now, the participation rate, it rose from 62.8% to 62.9%. So that's really meaningless at this point. And what we're seeing is that these jobs that are being created, they're the low-level jobs. Now, think back when Obama was bringing in all these illegal immigrants, and they wanted to bring in a lot of these refugees. Now, to boost GDP and to make sure that the economy continually operates, and this is part of the agenda of why they were bringing in illegals and why they were bringing in refugees, they needed individuals to fill the low-level paying jobs. And this is exactly what they have done, because most Americans were looking for a higher paying job because most of the people could not survive because they set their homes, their cars, and everything else, they were set at a different level. When they lost their jobs and they were taking these part-time jobs, maybe they have 2 part-time jobs, there were a lot of low-level jobs that no one was filling. To keep GDP up and to keep the job rate looking good, they needed to fill these. This way they can manipulate the numbers a lot better. Now, the gap between the unemployment rate and the unemployment to population ratio remains very, very wide. Now, digging through the numbers reveals some troubling features. The household survey reported that an impressive 345,000 jobs were added, more than 50% higher than the establishment survey. Now, the bulk of these jobs, like we said, they're part-time. Now, according to the BLS, in July, 393,000 part-time jobs were added. 54,000 full-time jobs were added. That's it. So we have a major problem here. So this was the biggest increase in part-time jobs going all the way back to September of 2016. Now, where are the jobs? We said before, they are in food services, drinking places, waiters, and bartenders. That's where they are right now. Even though the restaurant performance index is continually dropping, remember, a lot of these individuals, they can hire them. They get paid they get minimum wage here. They make a lot of their money on tips, so it doesn't cost the restaurants that much. So now there have been 89 consecutive months without a decline for waiter and bartender jobs. Now, these jobs fall in the category of leisure, hospitality, and that sector pays the worst wages, an average of around $13.35 an hour, which is around $331 a week. Now, if we look at the professional and business services, that added around 49,000 jobs. Within this category, administrative and waste services added around 30,000 jobs. Temp workers added 14,000 jobs, almost 15,000 actually. Healthcare added 39,000, with job gains occurring in ambulatory healthcare services, in the hospitals, and once again, they're low-paying jobs. So what we have right here is two things happening. We have students who are graduating high school, then going to college. They have these huge, gigantic student loans that they need to pay back. And they're looking for this full-time job. And it's just not out there because only 54,000, well, only that number was filled. The rest were part-time jobs. And when we look at the education level of jobs being filled right now, guess what? It's a high school diploma or lower. The college graduate right now, they cannot find work out in the workplace. They can't find that full-time job where they can go make what they need to make to pay back their student loan. A lot of these individuals are trying to find a part-time job, but it's very difficult because a lot of the employers say, listen, if I give you this part-time job, I know once a full-time job comes by, guess what? You're going to leave. And this is why they look for others who might not been a graduate, they might not have a college degree, might be an illegal immigrant because they know that they're going to keep those jobs, might be a refugee. And from the statistics, we can see the jobs that have been filled, well, it's on the lower level. So we can see right now these job numbers, it's just keeping the illusion alive. And this country cannot survive on a workforce that is working as a bartender, a waitress, working in the leisure or hospitality industry. It just will not work. If we're not filling these manufacturing jobs and building up the manufacturing companies and building more things, the country will not be able to survive right now. And it looks like at this point that we're still doing the same thing. Nothing's really changed in the economy. There's no new economic policy. The debt's still rising. We have the same exact problems. Obamacare is still in force. This economy still under what Obama, the Fed, has started. It has not changed. This needs to run its course, just like the stock market. Because how else do you prove to everyone that the way this system is working right now with quantitative easing, with all the stimulus and everything like that, you need to show everyone this approach does not work. And you need to let this system implode on itself. Let's compare it. Obama started Obamacare, this incredible health insurance that everyone's going to love. How else do you show everyone that it doesn't work? Yes, you can try repealing it, but that doesn't show how it doesn't work. You know what you let it do? You let it destroy itself. And you can turn around and say, listen, you gave us this. You told us it was going to be incredible. We've had half of the co-ops, the exchanges, go bankrupt. We spent billions of dollars. We spent hundreds of million dollars on a website that didn't even work. Premiums were rising like crazy. And now, nobody has health insurance. It's a complete disaster. Who do we blame? It's very easy. You blame those individuals who created it, who said it was going to be the best thing, and this is what's happening in the economy right now. The only way to show everyone that this economy, the way it was set up, what the Fed has been doing, what Obama did, what the deep state did, is to let it implode. And the only way to do this is to keep the illusion alive. And this is what is being done right now. Now, the central bankers, they're out there and they just can't figure out, why inflation is not hitting. Because global inflation right now has hit the lowest level since 2009. Now, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development said that consumer prices across the G20, the countries that account for most of the world's economic activity, they were 2% higher than a year earlier. Now, the last time inflation was lower was in October of 2009, when it stood at around 1.7%. So the central banks, they're trying to tell us that they can't figure out, how this occurred, why inflation is not rising. And when we look at this, we can see what they've done and how they're tricking us into thinking that there's no inflation, inflation is falling, and they just can't figure out why. Now, in general, when they calculate inflation, asset prices do not count. Bubbles in stocks and bonds, they do not count. Instead of using home prices in the CPI, they now use owner's equivalent rent. So their calculation in figuring inflation has been changed to trick everyone that there is no inflation. And we know what they did. They pushed everything into bonds, into stocks, into housing across the world, and they pretend that they don't know. They do know. They know exactly what they're doing. They tricked everyone into thinking that there was no inflation. Now, we've been seeing inflation all along. You can see it in housing. You can see it in college tuition. You can see it in food, and I'm not talking about the GMO box foods. I'm talking about the organic good food. You can see those prices continually rise. Yes, as gas prices came down, food prices dropped a little bit, but you can see they're on the rise once again. We saw it in meats. So you can see inflation. They just don't calculate. They don't figure that into their inflation calculation. And they've done this on purpose to make everyone believe that there is no inflation. Now, we've talked about the credit market, and right now, Bank of America Credit Investor Survey shows that they're more worried about the Fed in general, and they coined a new term. Now, we know that the ECB, the Fed, the central banks around the world, they're going to be, tapering their stimulus program. Now, we know they do this covertly, but the credit markets and certain financial pundits, they're very worried about this. And of course, the stock market, Wall Street, very worried about this. Now, they're started to talk about how the stimulus is coming to an end. And the new term that they're phrasing right now is quantitative failure. So we had quantitative easing, and they're saying because of that, we might have quantitative failure, where everything that the Fed has done over the many, many years, it might just end up in complete failure. And we can see already the credit markets, they've already gone negative. And we know if the credit markets freeze up like they did back in 2008, it's going to be a complete disaster. So they're very worried about this. They're worried about bubbles in the credit market. And we can see that there are more individuals looking at what's happening right now, and they're starting to realize, maybe things aren't as good as they are. Now, we've been following this for a very long time. We know exactly how this economy is falling apart, and not just us, there's many others. And we've been tracking it and watching it, just like we watch Obamacare completely fail on its own. We're watching the economy fail on its own. Now, as Obamacare has been failing, remember when Obama was in office, they were telling us how great it was. They were telling us how many people were joining. They were telling us that premiums are not going to go down. It was all a complete lie. The same thing with the economy, where they're telling us that unemployment is at 4.3%. The economy's doing well. We're bringing back jobs. Corporations, first of all, they're not bringing in sales. Earnings and sales are completely different. We see the tax revenues coming into state and federal government. They are not there. That shows us that the jobs are not high paying and a lot of people don't have jobs. We can see that the GDP numbers have been manipulated from the very beginning. We see retail closing all around us. The housing market is stalling. We already had Home Capital Group. They got into trouble. We see banks in Europe. They are failing. The entire system is shattering around us. The illusion is going to crack. And just like every other Ponzi scheme, like with Enron, with Bernie Madoff, and all the others, it always looks great on the surface until everything falls apart and everyone goes, hey, what happened? Where's my money? And the same thing's going to happen with this economy, because this economy, it's based on a lie. So whatever you're doing, continue to prep. Get your food, get your water, get your supplies. Make sure you have gold and silver to maintain your wealth. It's insurance against a dollar that's going to collapse. Make sure you're prepared and ready, because we're going to go through this transition period. And again, it's going to be in many different stages, where when it first starts out, just like in every other country, and the dollar starts collapsing and we start seeing inflation, people are going to do the first thing that everyone does. They try to get as much as they possibly can and get rid of those dollars that are falling in value. So they run to the store and they try to buy up as much as they want. This happened in Venezuela. This happened in Argentina. This happened in the Weimar Republic in Germany. This happened to many different countries. And once the shelves are cleared out, this happened to in the Soviet Union. Once the shelves are cleared out, supplies, well, they're going to trickle in because the credit market's going to freeze. And at that point in time, you will use your cash. So you need to have cash on hand. You will use it for a period of time. And then I think eventually what's going to happen is you're going to start to barter. Hey, I'll give you a roll of toilet paper for, whatever type of food or water, whatever you need. And I think this will happen until the system comes back online and we go through this transition period. Again, we're at the end of this entire system. The system was built on an illusion. They kept it going for many, many years, just like in the past, about 40 to 45 years, and then it finally comes to an end. This is what we're seeing right now. This is why you need to be ready and prepared. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks.